So I'll start by opening Solidworks and making a new part. So first you'll see me here define the basic shape of the cell phone stand. See the backrest and then also the plate at the front that keeps the phone from sliding forward. So you'll notice what I'm also doing here is I'm adding some dimensions to the lines. And what this does is it constrains the various lines to the world, which makes it easier for 3D printer to print, and then also it makes it so that you can change one dimension and it will reflect in other dimensions accordingly. So here I'm making the sort of stand part of the cell phone stand. Any lines that you see here that are blue means that they're not constrained or they're not dimensioned. So you'll see that I'll pretty much be doing this dimensioning until all the lines are black. And you do that just by adding dimensions and defining the dimensions if you need to, but most of the time just having the dimensions defined is enough to constrain them. But some of them, like the height of the cell phone stand, I did actually specify the dimensions for myself, because obviously those are the dimensions that are important for the cell phone stand because it matches my phone. So just final steps to make sure everything's okay here. Now I'm just going to extrude that shape sideways, and you can see now the stand looks like it's taking shape. So there's a few things I have to do to cut down the amount of material I was going to use. So you'll see right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make some 3D cuts in the legs of the stand, so that instead of one long leg we've got two separate legs, and so that would reduce the geometry a lot. So what I'm going to do is I've made these squares, constrain them as you can see, and after constraining them I'm going to drag them back and do a 3D subtract. So what it'll do is it'll actually subtract the geometry that you're extruding from the geometry that already exists. So once I finish constraining this, you'll see in just a sec. So here I'm going to drag it back and 3D subtract from the legs. And now we have two legs instead of one long continuous leg. So I still need to cut down some material, so I decided to make an A for alias removal. You'll see again, making sure that everything is constrained. You also want to be careful when you're making shapes that they don't actually float if they are cut out, because you'll see I'm going to subtract this from the body. So you want to make sure that obviously nothing is floating, because it's just impossible to print that. So there's the stand pretty much complete. So I added a little bit of a cool element to the stand where, as you can probably see from the photos, it would tell you whether your phone was in landscape or portrait. I spelled landscape wrong, but I just changed it. So I got an error when I tried to extrude this out. As you'll see, it says, I think it says no closed overlapping edges, that's what it was. So I had to change the text to Arial. So only certain text fonts will work for this. But as you can see, I just extruded like any other geometry. So you got to make sure too that the text you're using is large enough that your printer will be able to print it. You got to make sure that you read your specs for your printer. So here I am just measuring, just to make sure that some of the smaller bits of the stand will actually work with the printer. And now that it's done, I threw a model I got online of my phone, and we're finished.